Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon or good evening to all of you. At the outset, I would like to thank the Islamic Republic of Iran's embassy in Kuala Lumpur for organizing this webinar and for inviting me to share some thoughts and reflections on the subject at hand. Given the time constraint in this presentation, after an introductory remarks on the subject, I will first walk you through the very translation of the text of the declaration of the last Friday of Ramadan as International Quds Day. We will then identify and discuss 5 key points of the said declaration. And in the end, I will make my summary and conclusion. In order to mobilize support from Muslims and other oppressed nations in defending the Palestinian rights to self-determination, Imam Khomeini believed that instead of turning to grounds, topics, and issues having no roots in the culture of the Palestinian nation, one should take advantage of the ideology of Islam and its potentials. Declaring the last Friday of the fasting month of Ramadan as International Quds Day is consistent with this attitude. The month of Ramadan provides the Muslims with an ideal opportunity. Spiritually inspired by a month of fasting and attendance to religiously instructive ceremonies, the Islamic believers gain readiness to turn their attention to the great responsibility borne by the Ummah to liberate the first Qibla of the Muslims. To fully grasp the importance of the declaration of the last Friday of Ramadan as Quds Day, it is necessary to quote at some length the first message of Quds Day founder, which lays down the cornerstone of his conception of and philosophy behind the declaration, and the subsequent messages are based on these declarations. Thereafter, we will analyze the implications of the key points of the statements toward the Palestinian question. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. For many years, I have been warning Muslims of the menace posed by the usurper Israel, which has recently intensified her savage raids on our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Bent on the destruction of Palestinian freedom fighters, Israel has been ceaselessly bombing their houses and homes in southern Lebanon. I call on the Muslims of the world, as well as on all Muslim governments, to join forces to cut down this usurper and its supporters. I invite Muslims all over the globe to consecrate the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan, which is a day of faith, and which could also become the day on which the fate of the Palestinian people might be determined, as Quds Day, and to proclaim the international solidarity of Muslims in support of the legitimate rights of the Muslim people of Palestine. I pray to the Almighty for the victory of the Muslims over the infidels. May peace and mercy of God be upon you. Ruhullah al-Musawi al-Khomeini. Ramadan 1399 after Hijrah. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Quds Day is a global day. It is not a day exclusively for Quds. It is a day when the oppressed confront the oppressors. It is a day of confrontations for nations that have been under the tyranny of the American government and other oppressors. It is a day when the oppressed should become equipped against the oppressors, and they should rub their noses in the dirt. It is a day when committed individuals are preferred over hypocrites. Dedicated people consider today as Quds Day and act as they are obliged. The hypocrites and those who are secretly acquainted with the superpowers and are friendly with Israel today are indifferent and do not allow the nations to demonstrate on this day. Quds Day is a day when the fate of the oppressed nations must be determined. Oppressed nations should make their presence known to the oppressors, just like Iran rose up and defeated and will defeat. All nations should rise up and throw these germs of corruption in the garbage. Quds Day is a day when these followers of Iran's past regime and these corrupt plot-making regimes and superpowers in other places, especially in Lebanon, should know their assignment. It is a day when we and they should exert our efforts to liberate Quds and save our Lebanese brothers. It is a day when we have to rescue the oppressed from the claws of the oppressors. It is a day when the Islamic society should make its presence known to all superpowers and their pulp, whether in Iran or other places. It is a day when these intellectuals who have formed a relation with America or American agents should be warned that if they don't quit this interfering, they will be suppressed. Quds Day is a day when superpowers should be warned that they must leave the oppressed alone and sit back and take their own place. Israel has become the enemy of humanity, who daily starts a new uproar, setting our brothers in southern Lebanon on fire. Israel should try to understand that its masters don't have any power any longer. They should choose isolation. They should cut their covetousness of Iran and take their hands off all Muslim countries. Quds Day is the day of announcing such an issue. It is the declaration that the satanic superpowers want to isolate the Islamic nations and impose themselves on the scene of action. Quds Day is a day when their wishes should be chopped and they should be warned that those times are gone. The day of Quds is the day of Islam. All Muslims must be warned and must understand how strong their spiritual and economic powers are. Muslims are 1 billion people, supported by God, Islam, and the power of faith. Why should they be afraid? The day of Quds is such a day and announces such a goal, announcing the progress of the Muslims all over the world. The day of Quds is not only the day of Palestine, it is a day of Islam as well. It is the day of Islamic government. It is the day when the banner of Islam is to be flown in all countries, and the Muslims must show the superpowers that they cannot influence Islamic countries any longer. They must realize that the day of Quds is Islam's and the Prophet's day, the day that we must master all our powers, and all of the Muslims must come out of isolation and stand against the foreigners with all their strength. The day of Quds is the day that we will realize which regime and persons are cooperating with international conspirators and thus are opposing Islam. Those who do not participate in these demonstrations are opposing Islam and thus are in agreement with Israel. Those who participate in the demonstrations on this day are responsible people and are in stride with Islam and thus oppose Israel. The day of Quds is a day to distinguish between truth and falsehood. I ask God Almighty to give victory to Islam over all of the other faiths and support the deprived in order to defeat the arrogant, those who cause deprivation. I implore God to free our Muslim brothers in Palestine and South Lebanon and everywhere in the world from the oppressors, deprivers, and plunderers. Peace and blessings be upon the Messenger of God and the Imams of the Muslims. After walking you through the very translation text of the declaration, let us now analyze selected key points of the said manifesto. First of all, by stressing that for many years I have been warning Muslims of the menace posed by the usurper Israel, which has recently intensified her savage rage on our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Imam Khomeini's concern about the issue is not a new one born out of the establishment of the Islamic Republic. It is not meant to be an empty rhetoric aimed at winning the heart of the Arabs, or at least the Palestinians, towards the Islamic political establishment in Tehran. Instead, it has been a priority agendum for him, as a concerned Muslim worth the name, long years before the Islamic Revolution. Secondly, though all Muslim governments are mentioned, undoubtedly, Imam Khomeini's invitation to consecrate the last Friday of the fasting month is mainly addressed to the Muslim masses of the world, as suggested by the remarkable repetitions, I have been warning Muslims, I call on the Muslims of the world, and I invite all Muslims all over the globe. It shows that he is pinning hope on the masses and not their governments, as they have the power to mobilize once organized. Another reason behind his reliance on the people is indicated by his own remarks. He said, "It's a day when committed individuals are preferred over hypocrites. Dedicated people consider today as Quds Day and act as they are obliged. The hypocrites and those who are secretly acquainted with the superpowers and are friendly with Israel today are indifferent or do not allow the nations to demonstrate on this day." Quality as represented by committed individuals are favored over quantity, as represented particularly by the phrase the hypocrites, alluding to those in the high echelon of the governments in the Muslim world who, according to the Imam, are indifferent and do not allow the nations to demonstrate today. Third point, In this message, the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution points to the true nature and scope of the Quds Day as the day of all the oppressed and deprived people in confrontation with the world devourers and oppressors. Quds Day is a global day. It is not a day exclusively for Quds. It is a day when the oppressed confront the oppressors. If it is named Quds Day, it is only because the Palestinian question is a paradigmatic example of an oppressed nation under the yoke of a regional power fully backed by superpowers. Besides, in this clash between the oppressed and the oppressors, the modus operandi proposed by Ayatollah Khomeini is for the oppressed unified front to exhibit their existence and resistance against the arrogant powers and their surrogate agents in a bid to demonstrate their power of unity, will, and dedication. He said, "It is a day when the Islamic society should make its presence known to all superpowers and their pulp." Fourth point, by declaring that the Day of Quds is not only the Day of Palestine, but it is the Day of Islam, the Imam made it clear the true essence and orientation of the Palestinian issue. If, for the past 4 decades then, the issue had been reckoned as confined within the bounds of Arabism, particularly during the apex of Nasserism in the Arab world, in this communique, it is asserted that the matter is an Islamic one and therefore it concerns all the Muslims of the world. Lastly, taking into account the Islamic nature of the issue, which is supposed to have a place in the heart of every true believer, Imam Khomeini views the International Quds Day as a distinguisher or faruq and criterion or furqan when he rightly argues, and I quote, "The Day of Quds is the day that we will realize which regime and persons are cooperating with international conspirators and thus are opposing Islam. Those who do not participate in these demonstrations are opposing Islam and thus are in agreement with Israel. Those who participate and have demonstrations on this day are responsible people who are in stride with Islam and thus oppose Israel." So, having stated these 5 key points, let us mention them in summary. First, championing the legitimate cause of the Palestinians had been part of Imam Khomeini's agenda long time before the formation of the Islamic political establishment in Iran. Number 2, International Quds Day is the day when the Muslim masses are called for to go out and demonstrate their sense of solidarity and support to the Palestinian people. Number 3, it is the day marking the conflict between the oppressed of the world and their oppressors. Number 4, the Palestinian problem is an Islamic issue and is thus not only the business of the Arabs. Number 5, commemoration of the Quds Day through participation in the demonstrations delineates those clinging to Islam from those subservient to Israel. So, in conclusion, let us all fervently pray that this will be the last Quds Day program all over the world, with the liberation of the Holy Land and the true opening of its door to all religions and faith traditions without any discrimination. On a lighter note, those who are interested to get a free copy of my book, The Power of International Quds Day in the Cyberspace, may get it by following the link www.elzistyle.com/qudsday. I thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.